So far, officials here are not saying specifically what the president is planning to talk about beyond classified. For example, is there a new policy to talk about? Will be relating some information concerning the new information about a death in Washington State. We don't know the specifics yet because we didn't want to get ahead of the president's comments. But of course, this is something that President Trump has revealed and has done so in and one that could be potentially politically very dangerous.
And one day you can eat that
as part of the national focus connecting these events, which are national health emergency and global health emergency, to political circumstances and times themselves. So one of the issues that the president will be trying to settle the politics from government
halfway down a mad murder.
the president taking credit for some of his early moves.
I said somebody was saying some guy who was a shredder who went there.
They brought him out the door.
Measures that relate to medical equipment availability. Those are the things we don't yet know. We'll find out if the president addresses us here. But this is very much Trump style in the sense of announcing something on Twitter and then all of the necessary steps that make it happen begin to take on a very frenetic scramble to get it done. So that's where we are now. We expect that the president will have some announcement to make on a nature that he'll get no exception. The argument that I was getting is worried about this is not expecting some broader press conference.
Yeah, rally every 4 days.
President Lyndon, we're wondering if President Trump knew about this death. That's why he sent out that tweet a couple hours ago announcing that he was going to have this news conference today at 1:30. The meeting originally began in the Situation Room with Vice President Mike Pence. He's been the point person for this coronavirus task force. The president does not want to call him a coronavirus czar, but there have been other officials. I saw Dr. Anthony Fauci, who is the National Institute of Health, heading into the White House earlier for that meeting. That started at 10 o'clock today in the Situation Room. Then a couple hours later, we got word that there was going to be this briefing at 1:30. So the president is having a briefing here in the White House briefing room. He hasn't held many at all. This is his second in just a few days. So obviously there's something going on here. Many, even on the president's staff, were taken by surprise to come in here for this 1:30 press conference. It's unclear if he specifically knew about this death in Washington.
Okay, you got it, Mark. I'll let you know, Mike. Sorry. And then I couldn't hear anything. Okay, he's been pretty good. I wanted to make sure I was on talking to you. Got it.
For using those words, Democrat votes. So he was at that rally in Charleston, South Carolina last night. President Trump is waiting on his ear when the president starts speaking. Now he's out here. We're bringing to you. We'll ask him those questions. President Trump is out here today.
You look at my council communication,
Exactly. Oh, trust me. CNN for 20 years, you never want to get your RFP.
The president can't change policy. That's what happens. And then there's also the president has not often utilized the way other presidents have. No. To the nation on national concern, is the unclear and unknowns to try to give people reassurance. That's not been a role the president has played very often or been in position.
No wording yet.
In fact, you could argue that his statements at his rally,
Keep in mind,
maybe an opportunity for the president to
I don't even see
some of the major players here.
one out of the folks that is right from here, and she said she'll try to get us into it, so.
Republican presidency, and now embracing it in this particular time of concern, and we'll see how he utilizes it. Also, it's likely the vice president would be here as well as the head of the task force. Wouldn't be surprised if we saw the secretary of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar, here as well, to have that show. Of course, part of the optics at this point is for any White House, and certainly this White House, to try to look like they are on top of things, try to project that they have information, are in control of this. The critics and that is, of course, about how seriously they've been implemented. And these are ways for the president to try to demonstrate that they are taking specific actions that may be helpful and that they are being responsive as developments change. Allie, go ahead.
Well, look, Frederica, the president has not come into this White House briefing room very often. In fact, he's only done it a couple of times during the course of his presidency, and yet we are seeing 2 times this week now that the president will step into this briefing room. Really just a sign of how much he feels now that he needs to kind of try and wrangle the message. We know that the president is often very confident in his ability to kind of bend the public narrative in his direction, and certainly he's going to try and do that today. Of course, the last time that the president was in the briefing room, he took a lot of flack for underplaying the seriousness of the coronavirus spread and contradicting his own top public health officials, including when those officials were saying, this is going to get worse. And the president said, well, it might get worse, it might get better, we'll have to wait and see. Of course, now we know that it has indeed gotten worse, Fred, and that's because we have 1 death now confirmed in the United States, 4 cases of potential community spread, meaning cases where we don't know how those individuals got that. They had not had any history of travel recently. So those are the kinds of questions that the president is going to have to answer today. Why indeed did he underplay it for several days? And also, of course, on the economic front, which we know has been top of mind for the president as he's been confronting this issue. What is he going to do to try and calm the markets? The last time the president came to the briefing room, he didn't manage to calm those markets because we have now seen Wall Street has had its worst week on record since the 2008 financial crisis. And that is something that the president is extremely concerned about, particularly, of course, Fred, because this is a re-election year, and the president is banking on a strong economy to give him another 4 years.
I don't know. I'll let you know. Eric, you want to sit? I'll give you guys a few minute worries. Okay. Not yet, no, but I'll let you know. No, I was thinking I will give it to you. Yeah, I get it. Just this one over that camera. No, okay. So just it picks up now.
No, that mic is separate.
Okay.
So he's going to turn it down.
Fine. But there's no mic for that camera. We don't need. There's.
Yeah.
Hey, Tom, it's Kira. Can you hear me? Okay, Mark, I was going to say that op-ed, that guy also did a live interview. So if she wants to watch that guy's interview in addition to the op-ed, she can Google it. You bet. No sense. No warning, nothing. But it's It's a packed room. Who's winning the football game, by the way? Oh, okay. Oh, okay. Yeah, I guess I would be there. We're gonna go with it.
Sorry, what was that?
Just leave it here, I'll get it.
Is this a warning here? No.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No.
Sherry,
No, nothing's been put on the backup.
when you pull wide, your backup is a little soft.
Yeah.
What's up, Buffy's been for a while.
Alex, what's up? Real serious. Alex, can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you. No. Can you hear me?
¿Qué? ¿Está?
Move until it's nice and sharp. Yeah.
Any guidance on that?
Let me know if you get it. How long?
See how it goes. Highlight it.
Just lock it.
And now zoom it back in.
It should be sharp.
Don't touch anything, don't touch anything. And see if it's sharp.
Steve, I know it's sneaking. Let's consider ourselves lucky that I can remember that. You can get me in trouble.
So, was that your hit?
What are you doing?
Okay.
5. That's for planning.
Oh, Elizabeth, that's great. Certainly not. And part 5-minute warning. 5-minute
Trying
warning.
to find a balance
Yes.
that's not clear that he has between urging calm, urging, the country to come together and saying that, we have the best healthcare professionals, while at the same time, he has at times politicized it. He has gone after Democrats. And in his rally yesterday, he described Democrats trying to get him and said that coronavirus is their latest hoax, their latest effort to get him by hyping it up. And so there is this balance. It's not
2-minute warning before the briefing begins. 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning. 2-minute warning now. 2-minute warning.
President Trump was saying that his response to it, like China and other responses like that, had kept the number of cases low and prevented there being any deaths. And now today we know that there was a death. And it's one of these difficult situations where we don't know what might come next, and he doesn't, none of us do. It's difficult sort of staking territory and telling the public what they can expect.
Hey, do I have 1A in this? Do I have 1A?
Well, let's just say that there has been a relatively bipartisan concern about mixed messages that had been coming out of the administration, and the president responded to
Yes, I
that
hear you.
by putting Vice President Mike Pence in charge. Then they added a State Department doctor who is really strong in dealing with infectious diseases. And they also still have the director, the head of Health and Human Services, Alex Azar. Everyone has a slightly different title. None of them are technically the czar of this, and all of them seem to have slightly different roles. But the White House clearly realizing that they needed to get a handle on this, both from a messaging perspective and.
Bob, if you don't need me to stand, I think it's helpful to everyone that I not be standing in the doorway. Yes.
Chris?
I can certainly talk, but I'm not one. Do I not always look out?
वो ठंडा तो नहीं आप तो गरम करो ना ठंडा करो ना पंडित पता नहीं क्या हो पंडित क्या मैं तो तू तो अपना मूड बने आप तो बोलो सिंगल कमरा होगा आपका टोटल सिंगल कमरा होगा मगर सिंगल का कोई दिक्कत नहीं उधर कार्ड है उनका कार्ड है
Thank you very much, everybody. Before we begin, I'd like to congratulate all of those incredible people that have worked for so long on our endless war in Afghanistan, 19 years, going on 20 years, and there hasn't been a moment like this. We've had very successful negotiations. We think they'll be successful in the end. The other side's tired of war. Everybody's tired of war. That's been a particularly long and gruesome one. And I want to congratulate President Ghani and the people of Afghanistan. I want to remember all of the people, all of the great men and women that have lost their lives in the war, and to their parents and wives and husbands and families, brothers and sisters. These are great people. Many lives over such a long period of time have been lost. I want to thank our wounded warriors, people that are still bearing pain and all of the problems that they've had to go through. They're incredible people, incredible spirit. I'd go to Walter Reed and see them so often, and the spirit they had, they wanted to go back. Despite their wounds, they always said, I want to go back. Wounded warriors, they're incredible people. I guess most of all, I want to thank all of the people in the United States for having spent so much in terms of blood, in terms of treasure and treasury, the money that has been spent, the lives that have been lost. And we just signed an agreement that puts us in a position to get it done, bring us down to in the vicinity of 8,000 troops. The United Nations was informed of everything, and NATO has been great. Secretary Stoltenberg has been fantastic, and I want to thank the United Nations for the help they gave, and I also want to thank and congratulate Secretary Stoltenberg of NATO. 29 countries involved, and all approving, all very happy with what's going on. I want to also thank and congratulate Secretary of State Pompeo and Secretary of Defense Mark Esper. And I'll be meeting personally with Taliban leaders in the not too distant future. And we'll be very much hoping that they will be doing what they say they're going to be doing. They will be killing terrorists. They will be killing some very bad people. They will keep that fight going. We've had tremendous success in Afghanistan in the killing of terrorists, but it's time, after all these years, to go and to bring our people back home. We want to bring our people back home. And again, it's been a long journey in Afghanistan in particular. It's been a very long journey. It's been a hard journey for everybody. We're very largely a law enforcement group, and that's not what our soldiers are all about. They're fighters. They're the greatest fighters in the world. As you know, we've destroyed in Syria and Iraq 100% of the ISIS caliphate, 100%. We have thousands of prisoners. We've killed ISIS fighters by the thousands. And likewise in Afghanistan, but now it's time for somebody else to do that work, and that'll be the Taliban. And it could be surrounding countries. There are many countries that surround Afghanistan that can help. We're 8,000 miles away. So we'll be bringing it down to 8,000 to approximately 8,600 in that vicinity. And then we'll make our final decision some point in the fairly near future. But this was a very spirited agreement. There was a lot of talk. There was a lot of everything. They've been trying to get this for many years, and just it's time. So I just want to thank everybody. I want to congratulate everybody. I really believe the Taliban wants to do something to show that we're not all wasting time. If bad things happen, we'll go back. I let the people know we'll go back, and we'll go back so fast, and we'll go back with a force like nobody's ever seen. And I don't think that will be necessary. I hope it's not necessary. And so I just wanted to bring that up before we begin on a topic that has become very, very important to everybody. First of all, the amount of work that these professionals behind me and many other professionals in many rooms behind us who are watching right now, I don't have the room here to bring them all in, but they have been working round the clock so hard on the coronavirus. It's a tough one, but a lot of progress has been made. I want to provide an update to our people, to our citizens, to the world, frankly, on our action to address the coronavirus and those that have been hurt badly by it. At this moment, we have 22 patients in the United States currently that have coronavirus. Unfortunately, one person passed away overnight. She was a wonderful woman, a medically high-risk patient in her late 50s. 4 others are very ill. Thankfully, 15 are either recovered fully or they're well on their way to recovery. And in all cases, they've been let go in their home. Additional cases in the United States are likely, but healthy individuals should be able to fully recover. And we think that will be a statement that we can make with great surety now that we've gotten familiar with this problem. They should be able to recover should they contract the virus. So healthy people, if you're healthy, you will probably go through a process and you'll be fine. Since the early stages of the foreign outbreak, my administration has taken the most aggressive action in modern history to confront the spread of this disease. We moved very early. That was one of the decisions we made that really turned out to be a lifesaver in a sense, big lifesaver. On January 31st, I imposed travel restrictions on foreign nations who had, and anybody that had been to China or people coming out of China. And I want to say that China seems to be making tremendous progress. Their numbers are way down, and if you read Tim Cook of Apple said that they're now in full operation again in China. The numbers are way down. Experts now agree that the decision to move so quickly, despite a lot of opposition on that decision, was a wise one. It greatly slowed the spread of the virus to the United States, and it really gave us time to do some of the critical moves that we've done. And it allowed these great professionals to get together and figure it all out. And we think they've done that. We've taken the most aggressive actions to confront the coronavirus. They are the most aggressive taken by any country. and we're the #1 travel destination anywhere in the world, yet we have far fewer cases of the disease than even countries with much less travel or a much smaller population. As an important part of our efforts, on Monday I'll be meeting with the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world. Actually, they'll be coming to the White House, and we're talking about a vaccine and developing very quickly, and they've already started working on it, developing very rapidly a vaccine for the virus, to combat the virus, and we're having very good initial feedback. But these companies will be coming to the White House on Monday. Tremendous amounts of supplies are already on hand. We have 43 million masks, which is far more than anyone would have assumed we could have had so quickly. And a lot more are coming. Today, the White House Coronavirus Task Force, led by Vice President Mike Pence, they met for 2.5 hours. I spent a lot of that time with them also, and we came up with some ideas, recommendations, and frankly some pretty strict edicts that we're going to be going by, and Mike's going to be discussing that. But we are really having a group of people that is so talented, and they're working round the clock. And for that reason, I really would wish that we could report exactly what's happened, how well we're doing under quite adverse circumstances. But we're doing really well, very, very professionally handled. Our country is prepared for any circumstance. We hope it's not going to be a major circumstance. It'll be a smaller circumstance, but whatever the circumstance is, we're prepared. And I'd like to just ask and caution that the media, we would respectfully ask the media and politicians and everybody else involved not do anything to incite a panic, because there's no reason to panic at all. This is something that is being handled professionally. I also want to thank, by the way, governors and representatives of our various states, in some cases, some more than others, because they've really been working very hard in areas where we've seen indication of the virus. But I want to thank the governors and all of the representatives from all of our states, the rooms they've made available, the speed with which they've worked has really been incredible. So, again, thank you to everybody. I'm going to ask Mike Pence now to discuss a little bit about travel. And we have some restrictions on some travel from other countries that are having a hard time. And I want to thank everybody. We'll take some questions as soon as we're finished. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Let me begin, as the President did, by expressing our deepest condolences to the family of the woman in Washington State who's lost her life to the coronavirus. I want to assure that family that they're on the hearts of every American, and those that are continuing to struggle. And in some cases in ICU units can be assured of the prayers of millions of Americans. From the moment that this country learned of the spread of the coronavirus, President Donald Trump took decisive action, established the White House Coronavirus Task Force, and as the President just described, the President took unprecedented action to suspend all travel into the United States from China. It simply had never been done before by any previous administration. And it is among the reasons why the threat to Americans of coronavirus remains low, despite today's tragic news from Washington State. The task force met this morning and brought the President a range of options, and at his direction, we will be doing the following. First, the President authorized action today to add additional travel restrictions on Iran. We will be using Section 212F, banning travel from Iran Iran is also already under a travel ban, but we are expanding existing travel restrictions to include any foreign national who has visited Iran within the last 14 days. In addition to moving Iran, we are going to increase to the highest level of advisory, which is level 4, advising Americans do not travel to specific regions in Italy and South Korea. Let me say again, the President today has authorized the State Department to increase the travel advisory for Americans to level 4. We are urging Americans to not travel to the areas in Italy and the areas in South Korea that are most affected by the coronavirus. The President's also directed the State Department to work with our allies in Italy and in South Korea to coordinate a screening, a medical screening in their countries of any individuals that are coming in to the United States of America, and we look forward to working with them in a collaborative and a cooperative way. Now, with regard to the task force, I'm just a few days into this job, but I can tell you, having spent time with these extraordinary professionals that the President just alluded to, having spoken directly to more than a dozen governors, including Governor Jay Inslee this morning in Washington State, I think every American would be proud to know what I've heard about the work of HHS, the work of CDC, the work of all of our agencies. At the President's direction, this team has been working seamlessly with health officials at the state and local level. And I can assure the American public that we will continue to live out the President's admonition a few days ago that we're all in this together. And as we work with members of Congress, I've had the opportunity to speak with Republican and Democrat leadership in the Congress. We'll be working very closely on a supplemental funding bill to make sure that not only do all these agencies have the resources that they require, but we'll also make sure that state and local health officials have the resources and the reimbursement to take such actions that are necessary to protect the health of the American people. The President mentioned masks. This morning we talked a great deal about additional medical supplies. Let me be very clear, and I'm sure the physicians who are up here will reflect this as well. The average American does not need to go out and buy a mask. But this administration is going to always put first our patients first, and second, we're going to make sure and protect the health of our healthcare providers. As the President said, we have more than 40 million masks available today. We've contracted now with 3M to 35 million more masks per month will be produced, and we're also going to be working with other manufacturers. In addition to that, the Assistant Secretary for Preparedness and Response will be announcing today courses of action to increase the availability of masks, as well as prioritizing availability to high-risk healthcare workers, modifying guidance, and developing a whole-of-nations communications plan. The President wants us to be certain that our healthcare providers have the support they need to do their job and to do their job safely. With that, I'm going to yield the podium to the Secretary of Health and Human Services, and then we'll hear from some of our medical experts. But let me assure every American that President Trump's direction, this is an all-hands-on-deck effort. While the risk to Americans remain low, the President's actions today with regard to Iran, with regard to Italy and with South Korea, and with regard to making medical supplies more available, I hope gives evidence to the fact that at his direction we're going to continue to lean into this effort and put the health and safety of the American people first. Mr. Secretary.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Let me begin by, on behalf of all of the officials at HHS and our whole teams, expressing our sadness for the loss of this patient in the state of Washington. Any single death for us is a real tragedy, and our sympathy to her family and our solidarity with all those who are and will suffer from the novel coronavirus. From day one, this is what we predicted. This is what we expected. The risk to any average American is low from the novel coronavirus. The risk remains remains low thanks to the unprecedented actions President Trump has taken and the actions he's announcing today. That risk remains low. But this can change rapidly. We have always said from the first moment that we have spoken about this that we would see more cases. We are seeing more cases. We will see more cases. But it's important to remember, for the vast majority of individuals who contract the novel coronavirus, they will experience mild to moderate symptoms, and their treatment will be to remain at home, treating their symptoms the way they would a severe cold or the flu. For some individuals, a smaller percentage, especially those who may be medically fragile, they will require medical attention, including possibly hospitalization. Our basic message in terms of the containment of this disease and the measures that we have and are taken and are today announcing is we want to lower the amount of travel to and from the most impacted areas. This is a basic containment strategy. That is the philosophy behind the moves that we have taken, the moves we're announcing today, and any moves that we will consider in the future. With that said, let me turn things over to Dr. Tony Fauci, the director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Disease at NIH. Thank you very much. Dr. Fauci.
Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. I want to first again, as the entire team feels, to extend our sympathies to the family of the individual who expired as a result of this particular virus and this particular disease. But I also want to underscore and emphasize the points that the Secretary made about what is evolving here. You've heard of the terminology community spread. Well, community spread is when you have infection in the community in which you don't have a direct link to a known index case. That really challenges us with something that we need to do and that we do very well. The state and local health authorities, in collaboration with the CDC, would need to identify, isolate, and contact trace. And that's what's going on right here in the country. With regard to the particular area that's involved now in Washington, the country as a whole, because we get asked that all the time, still remains at low risk. But when we say that, we want to underscore that this is an evolving situation. And in real time, we will keep you appraised of what is going on just the same way as we are doing it today. So how do you address this new challenge? There's what we do from within and what we do from without. I hearken back to the original decision that was made by the president of making sure that we knew the scenario that was going on in China. We prevented travel from China to the United States. If we had not done that, we would have had many, many more cases right here that we would have to be dealing with. So in that spirit, the approach is going to be, as we address this challenge, which is going to evolve by the day and by the week, to do what was just mentioned, to try and keep our citizens from going to places that are active infection, and to prevent places where there are active infection to necessarily easily get here. That's the getting it from without to within. From within, we will very aggressively do the kind of public health measures that would hopefully contain this. But as we say this, we need to prepare for further challenges, and we will have them. We will hear about additional cases that will be coming on. You should not be surprised by that, but to realize that that is something that is anticipated when you get community spread. So when you have cases throughout the world, the way we're seeing now, South Korea, Italy, Iran, and places like that, the United States cannot be completely immune to that. The challenge is how we deal with it. And I can assure you all the resources that are necessary are going to be put into dealing with what we see evolving right now. Again, we'd be happy to answer any questions later, but Bob, do you want to say a few words?
I also want to add my prayers and sympathies for those that are sick and obviously our citizen that unfortunately died last night. Currently, as said, there's 22 cases in the United States, and these initial cases were really linked to travel to China and their contacts. Recently, as was stated, we've confirmed new cases with no link to travel history or contacts. And health departments under the leadership of the states and local health departments supported by CDC are aggressively evaluating these cases in California, Oregon, and Washington. As was said, we should anticipate to see additional cases and clusters in the days ahead, and we will continue to aggressively evaluate them by the state and local, territorial, tribal health departments in conjunction with CDC by embracing early case recognition, isolation, contact tracing, and begin to do that to limit the further spread. I want to also add my emphasis to what was said, that as we stand here today, the risk of the American public remains low. As was said, we should anticipate more cases, but again, the current risk to the American public remains low.
If I could just ask you said the other day in the cabinet room with African American leaders, you've got to get away from politics. You were down in Charleston last night using the word hoax when talking about Democrats. Somebody now is dead from this. Do you regret that kind of talk?
No. Hoax referring to the action that they take to try and pin this on somebody because we've done such a good job. The hoax is on them. I'm not talking about what's happening here. I'm talking what they're doing. That's the hoax. That's just a continuation of the hoax, whether it's the impeachment hoax or the Russia hoax. This is what I'm talking about. Certainly not referring to this. How could anybody refer to this? This is very serious stuff. But the way they refer to it, because these people have done such an incredible job, and I don't like it when they are criticizing these people, and that's the hoax. That's what I'm talking about.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I'm just going to ask you directly about this with regard to the flow of information. From the very beginning, you received a lot of criticism regarding that, in particular about Dr. Anthony Fauci. He is world-renowned in contagious diseases, and there were reports out there that he was being muzzled. Can you tell us that this widely respected expert, Dr. Fauci, will have every opportunity to tell us the truth?
Well, that's a very dishonest question because he has had that ability to do virtually whatever he's wanted to do, and in fact, he was never muzzled.
Okay.
I think I can speak. You can speak. Why don't you speak to that? Very dishonest question, but that's okay.
It's not dishonest. I want to clarify, Mr. President. I want to clarify.
So let me clarify it. I have never been muzzled, ever, and I've been doing this since the administration of Ronald Reagan. I'm not being muzzled by this administration. What happened, which was misinterpreted, is that we were set up to go on some shows, and when the vice president took over, we said, let's regroup and figure out how we're going to be communicating. So I had to just stand down on a couple of shows and resubmit for clearance. And when I resubmitted for clearance, I got cleared. So I have not been muzzled at all. That was a real misrepresentation of what happened.
Are you considering other travel restrictions? And
yes.
What about closing the southern border?
We are looking also southern border. In fact, some of the folks are here right now. Ken is here someplace. And yes, we are thinking about southern border. We have received a lot of power on the southern border over the last couple of years from the courts, but we are looking at that very strongly.
Mr. President, how should Americans prepare for this virus? Should they go on with their daily lives, change their routine? What should they do?
Well, I hope they don't change their routine, but maybe Anthony, I'll let you answer that, or Bob, you want to answer that?
Sure, Mr. President. Thank you. I think it's really important that, as I said, the risk at this time is low. The American public needs to go on with their normal lives, okay? We're continuing to aggressively investigate these new community links. We're going to continue to be transparent in relating that to the American public, but at this stage, again, the risk is low. We need to go on with our normal lives.
Mr. President, thank you very much. Increasing of the coronavirus in South Korea, and to warning about the U.S. troops in South Korea, and how did you consider that traffic in the U.S.?
Well, we care very much for the troops. We're in constant touch with the troops. We've been speaking to the general, as you probably know, 32,000 troops in South Korea. And that's all working out fine. And we're in touch. We were in touch with the authorities in South Korea yesterday.
What responsibility do you feel as you're communicating about this for the public to follow your directions and to take the prudent steps? And then when you did use the word hoax, couldn't that cause some people to not take the precautionary steps because they are linking what you're saying when you use the word hoax in context of coronavirus?
Okay, so again, the hoax was used with respect to Democrats and what they were saying. It was a hoax, what they were saying, and that was very clear if you'd read the words, and I think you know that too. As far as what responsibility, my great responsibility, I think the biggest decision we made was going very early, and that was a decision made against a lot of people that thought we shouldn't do that. That's why we're at 22 instead of a much higher number. It would have been a much higher number. That was a big decision. It was a hard decision because it had never been done before anyway. I mean, not even early or late. It had never been made a decision like that. So that was big. And my next thing is really getting the best people. We're the best people in the world. They're standing behind me. These people are so talented. I've seen them in action now for a number of weeks, actually, but in particular for the last 4 or 5 days. And I want to thank Mike Pence and everybody for the job they're doing. We have a great team. We have great people. And this too will end.
Are there
Go ahead, please. Go. Do what? Go.
Mr. President.
Mr. President, you talked about people going about their routine. I did want to ask, though, with you and the Vice President, is the White House taking any extra precautions to make sure that you don't come in contact with the virus, either through your travel or with who you meet?
Well, I think so. I mean, we lead a life. I get around. I was in South Carolina last night. We had a tremendous rally. I've been around. I think we're going to be in very good shape. You know, you're talking about 22 people right now in this whole very vast country. So I think we'll be in very good shape.
If I may, a couple of questions for Dr. Fauci about some particulars about the virus. Dr. Fauci, what do you now understand about the morbidity? The Secretary refers to medically fragile people. Are you confident that if you're a relatively healthy young person, that this will not be fatal for you?
Okay, so the number in our country currently is low, but when you look at the pattern, it seems to be following the experiences that others have had. It's never 100%. If you look at the totality of the cases that have been reported, particularly from China, about 75 to 80% of them would do really quite well. They would just sort of like a bad flu or a cold. You get anywhere from 15 to 20 somewhat percent who are going to go on to require advanced medical care, hospitalization, possibly intensive care. For the most part, the people who get in trouble and ultimately, tragically, would die from this are people who are elderly and or have underlying conditions, heart disease, chronic lung disease, diabetes, obesity because of the difficulty in breathing back and forth. However, every once in a while, you're going to see a one-off. You're going to see a 25-year-old person who looks otherwise well that's going to get seriously ill. But the vast majority of the people who get into trouble do have these underlying conditions. And that's why it confuses people, because they say, well, you just said that, and then there's a report of a 40-year-old physician from China who died. That's going to happen. That happens with influenza. Most of the time, influenza kills people who are advanced age and underlying conditions. But you hear in the media every once in a while, a college student would get infected and ultimately die. But the majority is in that risk group.
And one more technical question.
Yes.
Have you determined whether there are any variants of this virus so that a person who may have gotten it and then gotten over it could get it again?
No, there's no indication that that's going on at all. If this virus acts like other viruses, which I have no reason to believe it won't, once you've gotten infected and recovered, you're not going to get infected with the same virus.